Hi everyone, welcome back to Mental Health or Mental Wealth Reads. Continuing on with our reading of Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude. Today we'll be reading chapter 4, which is about exploring the powers of your mind, as was kind of alluded to in chapter 3. And it really is gearing up to be the kind of book that I'm hoping it'll be. And we really haven't yet gotten into the specifics of how mental health affects all of this. But as always, I will try to do my best to kind of fill in the blanks as much as I know, as much as I can assess just from reading this. So without further ado, we're going to get right into this. It's about 8 pages, so this one should be a little bit shorter than the last few. So that's good because that'll give me more time to talk. All right, let's get to it. You are a mind with a body. Because you are a mind, you possess mystical powers, powers known and unknown. Dare to explore the powers of your mind. Why explore them? When you make the discoveries that are awaiting you, they can bring you 1. Physical, mental, or moral health, happiness, and wealth. 2. Success in your chosen field of endeavor. And 3. A means to affect, use, control, or harmonize with powers known and unknown. And dare to investigate all non-physical forces lying outside the realm of known physical processes. Forces which you can use when you learn how to apply them. And this will not be so difficult for you. No more difficult than turning on a television set for the first time. For a little child can tune into his favorite television program. Now when he does, he either knows the construction of the broadcasting station or his receiving set. Now, when he does, he neither knows the construction of the broadcasting station or his receiving set, nor the technology involved. But that's alright. For all the child needs to know is how to turn the knob or push the right button. You will see in this chapter how you can turn the right knob or push the right button to get what you want from the most effective electrical machine ever conceived. Although this particular machine is the sublime handiwork of the divine power, you own it. How is it made? Well, among other things, it is comprised of over 80 trillion electrical cells. Naturally, it has many component parts, and each part is in itself an electrical mechanism. And one part is an electrical marble, yet it weighs only 50 ounces. Its mechanism consists of over 10 billion cells which generate, receive, record, and transmit energy. What is this wonderful machine that you own? Your body. You are and will be the same. You are and will be the same you, even though you lose an arm, an eye, or other parts of your body. And the electrical marble? Your brain and your nervous system. It is the mechanism through which your body is controlled and through which your mind functions. And your mind, it too has parts. One is known as the conscious and the other the subconscious. They synchronize. They work together. Scientists have learned a great deal about the conscious mind, yet it has been less than 100 years since we began to explore the vast unknown territory of the subconscious. Even though primitive man has deliberately used the mystical powers of the subconscious from the beginning of man's history, and even today the Aborigines of Australia and other primitive peoples do so to a very great extent. Let's start exploring now. Day by day, in every way, I'm getting richer and richer. Let's begin by accompanying Bill McCall of Sydney, Australia, on a journey from failure and defeat to success and achievement. It was at the age of 19 that Bill started a business of his own, hides and skins. He failed. At the age of 21, he ran for federal Congress, and again he failed. Now it seems that instead of crushing him, these and other defeats motivated the young Australian to develop inspirational dissatisfaction. So he began searching for rules of success. You see, Bill McCall wanted to become rich, and he thought he could find rules for acquiring wealth in inspirational books. Therefore, while checking the inspirational books section of the library, Bill became intrigued by the title, Think and Grow Rich. He borrowed the book and began to read. He read it once, and he read it again. And even though he read it The third time, Bill McCall was able to understand exactly how he could apply the principles whereby some of the richest men in the world acquired their wealth. He told us, "I was reading Think and Grow Rich for the fourth time while walking leisurely along a business street in Sydney. And then it happened. It happened suddenly. I stopped in front of a meat market window and glanced up. And in that very fraction of a second, I had a flash of inspiration." He smiled as he continued. I exclaimed aloud, "That's it! I've got it!" I was startled by my emotional outburst. So was a lady who was passing by. She stopped and looked at me in amazement. I hurried home with my new discovery. He continued seriously. You see, I was reading chapter 4 entitled Autosuggestion. The subheading was the medium for influencing the subconscious mind. Now I remember that when I was a boy, my father read aloud from Emile Coué's little book, Self-Mastery Through Conscious Autosuggestion. And then he looked at Napoleon Hill and said, "It was you who pointed out in your book that if Emile Coué was successful in helping individuals avoid sickness and in bringing the sick back to good health through conscious autosuggestion, autosuggestion could be used to acquire riches or anything else one might desire. Get rich through autosuggestion. That was my great discovery. It was a new concept to me." McCall then described the principles. It almost seemed as if he had memorized them from the book itself. You know, conscious autosuggestion is the agency of control through which an individual may voluntarily feed his subconscious mind on thoughts of a creative nature, or by neglect, permit thoughts of a destructive nature to find their way into the rich garden of his mind. When you read aloud twice daily the written statement of your desire for money with emotion and concentrated attention, and you see and feel yourself already in possession of the money, you communicate the object of your desire directly to your subconscious mind. Through repetition of this procedure, you voluntarily create through habits which are favorable to your efforts to transmute desire into its monetary equivalent. Let me say again, it is most important that when you read aloud the statement of your desire through which you are endeavoring to develop a money consciousness, you read with emotion and strong feeling. Your ability to use the principles of autosuggestion will depend very largely upon your capacity to concentrate upon a given desire until that desire becomes a burning desire. When I arrived home out of breath from running, I immediately sat down at the dining room table and wrote, "My definite major aim is to be a millionaire by 1960. Still looking at Napoleon Hill, he continued, "You mentioned that a person should be specific to the amount of money he wants to set and a date." I did. Now the man to whom we were talking was not the young Bill McCall who failed at the age of 19. He became known as the Honourable William V. McCall, the youngest man to ever become a member of the Australian Parliament, as the former chairman of the board of directors of the Coca-Cola subsidiary in Sydney, and as the director of 22 family-owned corporations. And as to riches, he became a millionaire and quite as rich as some of the men he had read about in the book from which he got the inspiration to explore the power of his subconscious mind with self-suggestion. Incidentally, he became a millionaire 4 years ahead of schedule. Day by day, in every way, I am getting better and better. You will note we use the word self-suggestion as being synonymous with the term conscious autosuggestion, used by Emile Coué. McCall remembered that when he was a boy, his father had benefited from a great discovery found in a book of his day, a discovery that every man, woman, and child can effectively employ when he finds it for himself. Like Bill McCall and his father, you too can properly employ the power of the conscious autosuggestion. Now, conscious autosuggestion was revealed to Emile Coué, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right, because he dared to explore the powers of his mind and the mind of others. Before he made his great discovery, he used hypnosis to cure the physical illness of his patients. But after making his great discovery, which was in reality based on a simple natural law, he abandoned the use of hypnosis. And how did he find and recognize this natural law? Emile Coué's great discovery was made when he found the answer to some questions he had asked himself. They were, question number 1, Is it the suggestion of the doctor, or is it the suggestion in the mind of the patient that affects a cure? Answer. Coué proved conclusively that it was in the mind of the patient that subconsciously or consciously made the suggestion to which his own mind and body reacted. Without either unconscious autosuggestion or conscious suggestion, external suggestions are not effective. Question number 2. If the suggestion of the doctor stimulates internal suggestion of the patient, why can't the patient use healthful, positive suggestions on himself? And why can't he refrain from harmful, negative suggestions? The answer to his second question came quickly. Anyone, even a child, can be taught to develop a positive mental attitude. The method is to repeat positive affirmations such as, day by day, in every way, through the grace of God, I am getting better and better. Throughout success through a positive mental attitude, you will see many self-motivators which you can use for your own self-suggestion. And if by now you don't know how to use self-suggestion, you will before you complete this book. When death's door is about to open, there are over 450,000 children born out of wedlock in the United States each year, and over 1.5 million teenagers enter penal institutions for car thefts and other crimes. These personal tragedies could, in many instances, be avoided if A. the parents learned how to employ suggestion properly, and B. if their sons and daughters were taught how to effectively use the principle of self-suggestion, or to use spiritual self-suggestion. Through the proper use of suggestion, these young people could be motivated to develop inviolable moral standards through their own conscious autosuggestion, and they would know how to neutralize or repel the undesirable suggestions of their associates in an intelligent manner. Of course, every individual responds to unconscious autosuggestion throughout his life more often than he does to conscious autosuggestion. In such instances, he responds to habit and the inner urge of the subconscious. When a man with PMA is faced with a serious personal problem, self-motivators flash from the subconscious to the conscious to aid him. This is especially true in times of emergency, especially when death's door is about to be opened. Such was the case with Ralph Wepner of Toowoomba, Queensland, Australia, one of our PMA Science of Success course students. It was 1:30 in the morning. In a small hospital bedroom, 2 nursing sisters were keeping vigil beside Ralph's body. At 4:30 the afternoon before, an emergency call had been made to his family to rush to the hospital. When they arrived at his bedside, Ralph was in a state of coma as the result of a severe heart attack. The family was now out in the corridor, each one worrying or praying in his own special way. In the dimly lit bedroom, 2 nursing sisters worked anxiously, one on each wrist, trying to feel a pulse beat. Because Ralph had not come out of the coma during this entire 6 period, and the doctor had done all that he felt he could, the doctor had left the room. He had gone to visit one of his other patients who was also in critical condition. Ralph couldn't move, talk, or feel anything. Yet he could hear the voices of the sisters. He could think quite clearly during portions of this period. He heard one sister excitedly state, "He's not breathing. Can you pick up a beat?" The answer was no. Again and again he heard the questions and answer, "Can you now pick up a beat?" No. I'm all right, he thought, but I must tell them. Somehow I must tell them. At the same time, he was amused at the sisters for being fooled like that. He kept thinking, I'm quite all right. I'm not going to die. But how? How can I tell them? And then he remembered the self-motivator he had learned. You can do it if you believe you can. He tried to open his eyes, but it seemed the more he tried, the more he failed. His eyelids wouldn't respond to the command of his will. He tried to move his arm, his leg, his head, but he couldn't feel any reaction at all. In fact, he didn't feel a thing. Again and again he tried to open his eyes until at last he heard the words, I saw one eyelid flicker. He's still there. I felt no fear, Ralph said, and still thought how amusing it was. Periodically one sister called to me, Are you there, Mr. Wepner? Are you there? To which I would try to respond by moving my eyelid to tell them that I was all right. I was still there. This went on for a considerable amount of time until, through constant effort, Ralph was at last able to open one, then both eyes. It was then that his doctor returned. With wonderful skill and persistence, the doctor and nurses brought him back to life. But it was the autosuggestion, "You can do it if you believe you can," that he had memorized from the PMA Science of Success course. That helped to rescue him when he was at death's door. Now, the books we read and the thoughts we think affect our subconscious mind. But there are also unseen forces that likewise have powerful effects, even though they are subliminal, below the realm of consciousness. These unseen forces can be from known physical causes or unknown sources. Before discussing the unknown, let's illustrate with an example that is now common knowledge since the publishing of Hidden Persuaders by Vance Packard. The story first appeared in American newspapers and later was picked up in magazines. Let's consider a report that appeared in a leading national magazine on the subject of subliminal advertising. The report tells of an experiment conducted in a New Jersey movie theater, in which advertising messages were flashed on the screen so fast that the viewers were not consciously aware of them. During a period of 6 weeks, more than 40,000 persons unknowingly became subjects of this test while attending the theater. Flashed on the screen by a special process that made them invisible to the naked eye were 2 advertising messages concerning products that were available in the theater lobby. At the end of the 6 weeks, results were tabulated. Sales of one of the products had soared over 50%, while sales of the other product rose almost 20%. The inventor of the process explained that, although messages were invisible, they still had taken effect on many in the audience because of the ability of the subconscious mind to absorb impressions that are too fleeting to be registered consciously. When this story appeared in the press, the public was horrified by this attempt to channel our thinking habits, our purchasing decisions, and our thought processes by the use of subliminal suggestion. People were afraid. They feared brainwashing in its most subtle form. Yet it is amazing to us that someone didn't take the PMA approach. Subliminal suggestion can be employed for desirable objectives too. Everyone knows that power can be used for evil or for good, depending on how it is directed. Now that the experiment has proved its purpose, it doesn't take much imagination to see what the beneficial results to the viewers would be should the following self-motivators be flashed on the movie screen. God is always good. Day by day, in every way, through the grace of God, you are getting better and better. Have courage to face the truth. What the mind of a man can conceive and believe, the mind of the man can achieve with PMA. Every adversity has the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit for those who have positive mental attitude. You can do it if you believe you can. This would be a PMA approach, provided, of course, the consent of the audience was obtained in advance. Another illustration of a known physical force affecting the subconscious mind can be shown by the effect of radar on navigators. Why did the SS Andrea Doria and the SS Valcom sink? When the Andrea Doria, captained by Pierre Clamé, and the Stockholm under Captain H.O. Nordenson collided approximately 50 miles off of Nantucket Island, 50 persons died. The Grace Line luxury liner, the Santa Rosa, under Captain Frank S. Sewick, collided with the tanker Valcom on March 26, 1959, 00 miles off the New Jersey coast. 4 crewmen were killed. Second mate Walter Wells, the radar operator on the Santa Rosa, claimed he had made 2 plottings of the tanker Valcom's course. No satisfactory explanation of the true cause of these collisions had resulted from the investigations in either of these instances. Could the waves from the radar instruments have been the real cause? Perhaps Sidney A. Schneider had the answer. As a young teenager, Sidney A. Schneider of Skokie, Illinois, became interested in hypnotism when he observed his older brother, a university student, successfully place his first subject under hypnosis. Sidney became an expert hypnotist. During his business career, he became a radio operator and an engineer in electronics. In the Second World War, Sidney Schneider was a vital part of the system known as IFF, Information, Friend or Foe. His job was to see to it that every ship leaving our country was equipped with radar. He noticed that radar operators sometimes went into a trance. They weren't aware that they had been in a trance when they came out of it. Because of his knowledge of hypnosis and electronics, Schneider concluded that the fixed attention on the naval employees took place when the waves from the radar machine were synchronized with the brainwaves of the operator. On this theory, he changed the waves on the radar instrument and eliminated the recurrence of the trances. Sidney Schneider told us that he converted his conclusions regarding the principle that placed the seaman operating radar in a trance into the brainwave synchronizer, a machine which he invented after the war. What is the brainwave synchronizer? It is an electronic instrument designed to induce various levels of hypnosis by subliminal and photic or light simulation of the brainwaves. The instrument can be used alone or combined with a tape recording of the therapist's verbal suggestion. No physical connections or attachments are placed on the patient. Results are obtained at any distance in which the light in the machine was visible. The apparatus induces light to deep hypnotic levels in over 90% of the subjects in an average time of 3 minutes. In an experiment with the brainwave synchronizer, none of the persons involved was informed about the machine or what it could do. Neither were they told that they were subjects of an experiment. Yet 30% of them were hypnotized to various degrees ranging from light to deep states. Why and how does the brainwave synchronizer work, we asked. It is like a television transmitter, Schneider said. The human brain produces pulses or waves of electricity in several frequency ranges. This knowledge has been applied in the field of medicine since 1929, and the invention of the electroencephalograph, commonly known as the EEG machine, and an apparatus for recording brainwaves. My machine operates much like a television system, Schneider continued. The reason the picture on your receiving set does not drift up or down is that the pulses generated within the set synchronize with corresponding pulses generated by the transmitting television station. The receiver is forced to operate at a rate controlled by the transmitter, and the picture must obey. Like the transmitter of a television station, the brainwave synchronizer also produces synchronizing pulses. And through photic simulation, the waves sent from the synchronizer cause the frequency of the brain waves also to lock in step. At this point, hypnosis can be achieved. Just compare your brain to a receiving set, and the brainwave synchronizer to a television transmitter. And you will see as you continue to read that in addition to comparing your brain to a receiving set, you can compare it to a television transmitter as well. We have just explored some of the unseen forces of known physical causes. Now let's proceed further into the realm of the unknown, the thrilling field of psychic phenomena such as 1. ESP or extrasensory perception, awareness of our response to an external event or influence not apprehended by sensory means. Here are included A. Telepathy, B. Clairvoyance, which is the power of discerning objects not present to the senses, C. Precognition, which is seeing into the future, and D. Postcognition, which is seeing into the past. And then 2. Psychokinesis, which is the effect of the mind on an object. Now let's be realistic and keep our feet firmly on the ground. Let's explore the unknown with common sense. You'll be in danger unless you use good logic and avoid the gathering of cobwebs in your mind. Facts should be your stepping stone over the river of doubt. Therefore, let an experienced guide direct you along safe paths, and we will introduce you to such a guide. But before we do, let's talk about the past. Thomas J. Hudson's famous book, The Law of Psychic Phenomena, when published in 1893, became a bestseller. The book is published today in paperback by Kessinger Publishing, Whitefish, Montana. It contained many thrilling stories of reported psychic experiences. The imaginations of tens of thousands of people who read this book were stimulated. Some were ready, some were not. From then on, public interest in psychic phenomena made rapid progress, but many persons, not properly prepared, injured themselves by becoming crackpots. This was due to the awesomeness and magnetic interest a little knowledge of psychic powers generated within them. There is a noticeable tendency of some persons who are not properly educated and mature in their thinking, and not very well adjusted emotionally, to become fascinated with this intriguing study. It is easy to understand why so many religious leaders, scientists, and persons responsible for the welfare of the people found the study of psychic phenomena an anathema. 1. Imaginations ran rampant and threatened the sanity of the people. 2. Fact and fiction seemed to be indistinguishable. 3. Hypnotism by amateurs and vaudeville entertainers, as well as the trickery and frauds practiced by fakirs, mediums, and charlatans abuse the minds of the public. And 4. Basic religious principles were twisted in a direction that led to evil. Anything associated with psychic phenomena became repellent. It was taboo. In spite of the dangers, taboos, and social or professional ostracism, there were courageous, honorable men with good common sense who had the courage to explore for the truth. But it remained for the long, courageous fight of Dr. Joseph Banks Rhine, formerly of Duke University, inspired and assisted by his wife, Dr. Louisa E. Rhine, to clothe the study of psychic phenomena with respectability. This is due to the impeccable character of Dr. Rhine and to his 30 years of controlled laboratory experiences based on mathematical laws. His task was a difficult one because spontaneous psychic phenomena are not apt to occur in a laboratory. Such phenomena occur when least expected, and most often when a person is under the greatest emotional strain, or possessed of an intensified obsessional desire, often simultaneously with the death of a loved one. It is apparent that any writer on the subject of psychic phenomena today endeavors to have the protection of a part of the cloak of Dr. Rhine's respectability by referring to Dr. Rhine and Duke University to make his own theories digestible. We are no exception. We urgently suggest that if you are interested further, you read The Reach of the Mind and the other books of which Dr. Rhine is the author or co-author. Our recommendation: let Dr. Joseph Banks Rhine be your guide. And how successful has Dr. Rhine's work been in breaking down the resistance to the investigation and belief in these strange mind powers? A fair test, it would seem to us, lies in the fact that hard-headed businessmen are convinced and are making experiments of their own. In an interview, Dr. P.A. Castruccio, director of the Westinghouse Astronautics Institute, confirmed that Westinghouse scientists are engaged in research to find a means of using telepathy and clairvoyance for long-distance communication. Dr. Castruccio, too, had many lengthy visits with Dr. Rhine before a decision was reached to engage in this great experiment. And will the search for ways and means to harness telepathy, clairvoyance, and make them commercially feasible be successful? Let us answer this as follows. Not too long ago, people were scoffing at ideas that were unbelievable to them then, but are taken for granted today. Matter being turned into energy, and energy into matter. B, the breaking of the atom. C, man-made satellites. D, jet power. Or E, everyday necessities like television, for example. And what about the electronic computer that was designed from the human computer? The human brain and the nervous system. Everyone was conceived, believed, and achieved by men with PMA. Machines that operate with the speed of light, 186,300 miles per second. Machines that can calculate 40,000 arithmetical operations per second and detect and correct their own errors. Machines that can become a reality because man built into them electrical circuits which in many respects function like the known electrical activity of the nervous system of your own physical body. Our answer: what the mind of a man can conceive and believe, the mind of a man can achieve with PMA. But no machine or man-made invention is as marvelous as the wonderful human computer you own, your brain and your nervous system with their power of electrical activity. Man is more than a body with a brain. You are a mind with a body, a mind possessing and also affected by powers known and unknown, a mind composed of two parts, the conscious and the subconscious. Here we have stressed most the concept of the subconscious mind, its powers and the forces known and unknown that affect it. But what about the conscious mind? That is equally important. And you will read about it in the next chapter entitled, And Something More. Now, if your reaction to what you have read has not given you an insight on how you can turn the right knob or push the right button to get what you want from the machine you own, dare to explore the powers of your mind. Okay, so reactions to this chapter. I think this is actually a really good again in Bridgeway, into the exploration of whether or not mental health makes it impossible to be able to achieve what they're saying you can achieve in this book. And I think the reason why it's a good Bridgeway is because it brought up examples of people who were physically didn't have a pulse and were able to control their mind to such a degree that they were able to at least give signs of life. And I think that's something that we can't overlook, right? That's something that shouldn't just be a one-off experience, because it has happened before. The man in the example, he's not the only one. He's not the only person that has been able to overcome what seems to be impossible odds, and using his own mind to bring himself back to life, essentially. And again, I want to point that out because it can be easy to have or draw the conclusion that, okay, I have a clinical diagnosis of depression, and therefore thinking positively is impossible for me, or it's hard for me, or it's difficult. And as I've said before, gonna be difficult, gonna be hard, but not impossible. So it's really good to point that out. It's really good to hear that explained in this book, because I was actually a little worried that it was just going to be, however many chapters of, and you could do it no matter what, without any sort of indication that personal barriers or mental health and things like that can get in the way. Another thing I was thinking about as I was reading it is the fact that because we know so much about hypnosis today, that it really one thing I was thinking about as I was reading this is the mention of hypnosis, right? And as Napoleon Hill mentions, it has really been decades of trial and error. At this point, it's not so much. At this point, the mental health community has figured it out to the point where we can use it safely, and never against the will of the person. And that is a really good point to bring up. It's something I hadn't thought of before, because it's true. It's true. Within the use of hypnosis, right? If I were to hypnotize you, first of all, I'm not trained to do that, so I don't know how to do that. But if I were, and you were my client or my patient, I would not be able to do anything to you without your consent. And that is a very important thing to mention, and Napoleon Hill does expound on that a little bit, because in terms of change, big or small, I can't make you do anything, right? And it's something, I've even said to my clients before in varying situations, right? If you want to make this change, it's going to have to come from you deciding to make this change. I can give you all the tools. I can give you all of the insights. I can give you all the coping skills. I can give you everything. I can give you the entire education and training that I have. But until you decide that you want to allow these things to affect you positively, and that you want to commit to the very regular daily practice of integrating these positive changes into your life, change is not going to happen, right? So ultimately, we are the masters of our own fate. And I think that quote was mentioned before, right? We are the masters of what we do, and what kind of a life we live, and how that life affects us too. And it's an old saying, sticks and stones can never hurt me, or sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me. And it's honestly, it's been argued since the dawn of time, right? Can words actually hurt you? Absolutely. But can those words be the thing that keep you down? No. If those words are keeping you down, it's because, again, that auto-suggestion, what's going on in your brain, either consciously or subconsciously, is telling you that is where you need to unpack and live in that area, right? You know, and it's something that you know, we encourage against in clients who are struggling with PTSD, clients who are struggling with literally anything, honestly. Your symptoms and your mental health are always, not always, but they are going to be, put it this way, your mental health, what we give you as a diagnosis, right? Or whether you have a diagnosis or not, anyhow, whatever your mental health is categorized as, that is for us to give to you, first of all, because insurances require it to justify you getting treatment and not having to pay full price, right? That's one thing. We could talk about that in a different segment because I got a whole soapbox about that. But the other reason we give you guys a diagnosis, we give anybody a diagnosis, is so we know how to treat you to overcome the symptoms that you have, right? It's never, ever, ever going to be a label saying this is what you are going to be experiencing the rest of your life. Not a therapist believes that, right? Not one person in the mental health field is trained to believe that, you know, someone who comes into me with very crippling depression is always going to have crippling depression, right? We are trained, and we all believe this. We are trained and believe to know that there is always hope, right? There's always a possibility through psychology to train your mind and your body and your heart and every part of you to have a healthy life, regardless of what you're going through, right? One story that is one of my favorites. In fact, it's one of my favorite movies too, which is based on a true story. Is the story of John Nash in the movie Beautiful Mind, which I think was back in the early 2000s. I recommend watching that. Great movie. But this was a man who had schizophrenia, and he was seeing things, hearing things, feeling things, you know, and throughout the course of his life, he had to deal with that. And this was at a time too, this was, I think it was back in the 60s or 70s before we really knew a lot about schizophrenia, and we were just kind of trying to figure out what kind of medications were working for mental health, etc. But one other important thing about John Nash was he was an incredibly intelligent mathematician, right? And he taught at, I forget which university he taught at, but he taught college classes in math, right? And at some point he realizes that the medication that he is taking to get rid of these schizophrenia symptoms are impeding on his ability to do math or to see all the connections that he was good at making mathematically. And so at some point he learns to deal with it. He takes his he stops his medication, which, special PSA, not recommended, right? Unless your doctor says it's okay, not recommended. If you are prescribed a medication, I would take that unless it's harming you, like actually physically. Okay, PSA over. Anyway, so he learns to specifically identify the factors of his symptoms, right? He learns to assimilate to the fact that, okay, there are going to be people and things that I see and hear that may not be there. And he said, too easy. If I'm ever curious, I'm going to ask somebody, do you see that person there? I'm going to, put things in place so that I can verify what's a symptom and what's not. And if it is a symptom, I'm simply going to step around it, right? And of course, the movie is going to make it dramatized and look as if this was all just a piece of cake. I guarantee you it was not. But the point was, John Nash ended up living a life, the rest of his life, with a wife and kids and just the life that he wanted, because he was able to use his mind and what he had gathered by paying attention to his own self, his own brain, that autosuggestion that they're talking about, and and create a life that he wanted despite what he had going against him, right? And again, this is the kind of mentality that we use as therapists, right? Whether it's PTSD symptoms, right? You're not going to have those nightmares, those flashbacks, those panic attacks. You're not going to have any of those for the rest of your life. You don't have to. The whole point of having a therapist or having a mental health field is because we have found that people can overcome those things, right? People can learn about themselves to such a degree that they can overcome their symptoms. And that is really, like I said, what Napoleon Hill is getting at in this chapter, that there really is nothing that you can't overcome with your mind. The mind is incredibly powerful. I forget how much we actually use of our own human brains. I honestly think it's like 10 or 11%. But just imagine, like, we are only functioning at 10% of our brain function right now, on average, right? But that means there's so much more up there. There's so much more power up there than we realize, right? There's 90% more of a brain, that isn't being used. And imagine, just imagine if you could tap into that, right? So takeaway number one, there is nothing that you can't overcome, right? There really is not. And again, like I said, it is a firm belief, and honestly foundational belief in the mental health field, that every person that walks into our office can overcome what they're going through, 100%. Takeaway number two, nobody can change you unless you allow them to, right? And I say this with respect to people who have been in situations where it's been an abusive sort of relationship or an abusive environment. Another book that I suggest reading, in fact, I think I will probably begin a separate reading segment just on this book, is Man's Search for Meaning. It is a wonderful account, and by wonderful I mean just very inspired and very life-changing sort of account of Viktor Frankl, the author. He was a psychiatrist or psychologist who was in Auschwitz camp of Auschwitz, and instead of just taking a Diary of Anne Frank sort of account of the events that happened to him, he paid attention as much as he could to what was happening around him, despite the suffering he was going through. I mean, I don't know any person who would say that there was anything worse than the Holocaust. I mean, certainly there were numerous wars. There have been numerous, situations similar to it. But the Holocaust, truly at this point, even now, should be considered the lowest in human evil, right? Human inspired evil. And what the Jews and the people in those camps had to go through is still the most atrocious thing, next to slavery, right? Well, what I mean is next to this, next to the slavery that the African American community suffered historically as well. But I recommend reading that because it also is an account of this is the worst thing that one of the worst things a human has been through, and I have come out of this with not only insights about human suffering, but also insights about what it is about the mind of a human that is so powerful that it can overcome it, right? And before I talk, because I realize I've been talking for quite some time now, but before I talk too much, like I said, takeaway number one, you can overcome anything. And takeaway number two, you are the person who has the keys to that. You are the person who has the ability to create an environment for yourself that gives you the proper autosuggestion, the proper, as they say, hypnotic suggestion, as they were talking about in the incident about the movies, right? You can do that. That is you. And if you are struggling with that, there are plenty of therapists all around the world. I would recommend looking up psychologytoday.com for therapists in your area. They're both virtual and in person, but we are here to help you. And with that, I'm going to sign off again before I go on too long. But thank you so much for watching this, reading this chapter with me. Please, again, like I always say, leave a comment, leave a question, or recommendations as well. And I will read them and I will respond to them, in a separate video segment. Yeah, thanks for watching. Have a nice day.